5 years ago, I bought my first brand new car. Nothing expensive, just a gray car that I'd spent almost 3 years saving for. I lived alone in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. Every night I parked the car in my driveway, locked it with the key fob, and checked that the doors were secure before going inside. I was obsessed with taking care of it. That's why I noticed something strange almost immediately. Every morning, the driver's seat wasn't in the same position. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd adjusted it on the way home from work. Maybe I simply wasn't paying attention. I pushed the seat back to where I liked it and forgot about it. The next morning, it had moved again, only slightly. Just enough that my knees were closer to the dashboard. The mirrors were angled differently too. Not much. Just enough that I had to readjust them. I assumed someone at the dealership had forgotten to tighten the seat tracks. During my first oil change, I mentioned it. The mechanic inspected everything. Nothing was wrong. The seat couldn't move by itself. Neither could the mirrors. I drove home, thinking I was imagining things. About a week later, I stopped for gas on my way to work. The fuel gauge surprised me. I could have sworn I'd filled the tank 2 days earlier. Instead, it was nearly half empty. I checked my banking app. There was only one gas purchase. Mine. I lived alone. Nobody else had access to the car. It didn't make sense. Then, I found a fast food receipt. It was wedged between the passenger seat and the center console. I never ate fast food in my car. The receipt was from a 24-hour diner on the other side of town. The timestamp read 2:41 a.m. I was asleep at 2:41 a.m. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages, nothing unusual. I threw the receipt away. Over the next month, little things kept happening. The radio would be tuned to stations I'd never listened to. The climate controls were changed. Once, I found mud on the driver's floor mat after a week without rain. Another morning, there were tiny pebbles trapped in the tire treads from a road I'd never driven on. I started wondering if I was sleepwalking. I'd never done that before. But I couldn't think of another explanation. My doctor ordered a sleep study. Everything came back normal. One Saturday morning, I walked outside carrying groceries. That's when I noticed something I'd somehow missed: the mileage. When I'd bought the car, I wrote the odometer reading in a maintenance notebook. I updated it every time I changed the oil. According to my records, the car had accumulated nearly 300 extra miles over the previous 2 months. I hadn't driven anywhere unusual. Those miles shouldn't have existed. I decided to test something, and that night, before going to bed, I took a small piece of clear tape and placed it across the driver's door and the frame. If anyone opened the door, the tape would tear. The next morning, the tape was still there, untouched. I smiled. Finally, proof that I was imagining things. Then I unlocked the car. The driver's seat had moved again. The radio was playing an old country station, and the gas tank had somehow dropped by almost a quarter. I stood in my driveway staring at the dashboard. The tape hadn't broken. The door had never opened. Yet someone had obviously been inside. The following weekend, I installed a dashcam. Not one, that only recorded while driving. One with motion detection and parking mode. If anyone got into the car, I'd have video. The next morning, I rushed outside. The seat had moved again. Perfect. I removed the memory card. The first several hours showed exactly what I expected. My driveway, nothing moving. Around 1:50 a.m., the recording suddenly froze. No static, no distortion, just a perfectly still image. It stayed frozen for exactly 12 minutes. When the video resumed, the car was parked exactly where I'd left it. The timestamp now read 2:02 a.m. 12 minutes were simply gone. I checked every file. Every night after that, the camera froze at almost the exact same time, always for around 12 minutes, always with no explanation. Convinced the dash cam was defective, I borrowed a second camera from a coworker, different brand, different memory card. I mounted it facing the driver's seat. The next morning, both cameras had frozen. At exactly the same moment, for exactly 12 minutes. I finally reported everything to the police. The officer listened patiently, then asked if I'd given anyone a spare key. I hadn't. He inspected the locks. No signs of forced entry. He checked the key fob. Nothing unusual. Before leaving, he smiled politely. It's probably an electrical issue. I wanted to believe him. Until 3 nights later. I woke up at exactly 2:01 a.m. Not because of a sound, because my car started. The engine came to life in my driveway. I jumped out of bed and looked through the bedroom window. The headlights were on. The engine was running. But there was nobody in the driver's seat. I grabbed my house keys and ran outside. By the time I reached the driveway, the engine shut off by itself. The headlights went dark. The doors were still locked. When I unlocked the car, the driver's seat was warm, as if someone had been sitting there only seconds earlier. I slowly looked down. Resting in the cup holder was a set of keys, old, rusted, nothing like mine. Attached to them was a faded plastic tag with one handwritten number, 214. I picked up the old keys. There were only 2 of them. One looked like a house key. The other belonged to a car I'd never seen before. The plastic tag attached to the ring simply read 214. No street name, no building, just the number. I searched every compartment inside my Camry. Nothing else had changed. No fingerprints, no mud, no signs anyone had been inside. Only those keys. The police couldn't explain them. They dusted them for prints. Nothing. Almost as if they'd been wiped clean. The officer suggested someone was playing an elaborate prank. I asked him the obvious question. How did they lock the car from the inside? He didn't have an answer. I decided to stop wondering. Instead, I started tracking the car. I hid a GPS tracker beneath the spare tire in the trunk. If my car moved, I'd know exactly where it went. That night, I barely slept. at 2:03 a.m. My phone vibrated. Vehicle moving. I jumped out of bed, opened the tracking app. The blue dot representing my car was leaving my neighborhood. The problem was, when I looked out the bedroom window, my Camry was still sitting in the driveway, exactly where I'd parked it. I stared at the screen. According to the GPS, the car continued driving across town, 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles. Then it stopped. The location appeared beside an abandoned motel on the edge of the city. Its address, 214 Oak Ridge Road. The next morning, my actual car was still in my driveway, but the odometer showed another 62 miles. Exactly the distance to that motel and back. I drove there immediately. The place had been abandoned for years. Broken windows, collapsed balconies, weeds growing through cracked pavement. Every room had been boarded up, except one, room 214. Its door stood slightly open. I stepped inside and the room was empty. No furniture and no carpet, just peeling wallpaper and years of dust. Then I noticed something in the center of the floor. Fresh tire marks. They led into the room, but they didn't lead back out. I stood there trying to understand what I was looking at. A car couldn't possibly drive into a motel room, and even if it had, there was no exit. The tracks simply ended. As I turned to leave, I heard an engine start. Outside, I ran into the parking lot. My Camry was parked near the entrance. Engine idling, driver's door open. I hadn't driven it there. I was holding its keys in my hand. Slowly, the driver's door closed by itself. The engine shut off. Everything became silent. When I reached the car, there was something lying on the passenger seat. A photograph. It showed my Camry parked outside the same motel. Standing beside it was a man. He looked almost exactly like me. Same height, same jacket, same beard. The only difference, he looked older. Much older. On the back of the photograph, someone had written one sentence. "Thank you for lending it to me." No name, no date, nothing else. I sold the car the following week. I didn't tell the dealership why. I just wanted it gone. For months, nothing happened. Then one evening, I received a call from an unknown number. The man on the other end introduced himself. He said he'd recently bought my old Camry. At first, he thought he was calling the previous owner about the maintenance records. Then he asked me a strange question. "Did your driver's seat ever move by itself?" I couldn't speak. Before I could answer, he quietly said, "I think someone keeps borrowing my car." The line went dead. I never called him back. Sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I still check my driveway, even though that Camry has been gone for years. Because every now and then, for just a second, I hear a car engine start outside my bedroom window. Then it slowly drives away. And when morning comes, there are fresh tire tracks leading out of my driveway, but never back in.